Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Whenever the Prime Minister differs, the Prime Minister acts in a confused manner, it sends a bad signal. And yesterday, the Prime Minister of Canada had a somersault. Our Honorable Ambassador to China had made an absolutely unacceptable, unseemly statement that was essentially anti-Canadian and anti-national. And the Prime Minister, in his own wisdom, did not see anything wrong with it. As a matter of fact, he graciously ignored it, thereby giving it a tacit approval. And when the hell broke loose, and when the people got annoyed, and when the opposition parties very correctly objected to that statement, and the journalist pillored it, then he asked for the resignation of the ambassador, and the ambassador resigned. And even there, there was a clear bankruptcy of graciousness. Normally when a person of the level of a cabinet or an ambassador resigns, you only say that he or she has resigned because of personal reasons. You do not say that the Prime Minister has demanded and accepted the resignation. This demand and acceptance shows the scant regard for graciousness, for civil discourse, for decency, and especially in this way, the contradictory manner in which the Prime Minister acted. First, not condemning this statement, and then asking for resignation shows absolute lack of civil discourse as well as lack of political acumen. I remember when the Liberal Party came to power, it came with a new approach to the foreign policy that was practiced by the conservative predecessors and replaced it with something much more idealistic. The youthful Prime Minister Justin Trudeau embarked on an international media circus, which he repeatedly declared himself as a feminist, as a humanist, as a protector of the human rights. And the Foreign Service, renamed Global Services, all the way up to the Minister Chrystia Freeland, began to loudly champion environmental and human rights causes, not only in Canada, but also in other countries, thereby many times made bumbling efforts that were a clear indication of what the Chinese call an exhibitionism of white supremacy. As a matter of fact, I have always been critical of any country, be it USA or be it Canada, or be it England, that interferes in the internal affairs of the other country. These busybodies, these bullies, political bullies, have no right to interfere in the affairs of others, and yet they did so. And then if you want to propose and support human rights, you can do it in a different manner rather than critically examining them with a clear objective to deride the government. And no national government can tolerate this thing. But for some time, it seemed that the policy of the Liberal government was working and the people were happy. Possibly the Prime Minister was trying to build up Canada as a soft power. Hard power it is not. It is dependent on USA for its protection even. And the international media legged it up as they would lick up split chocolate. The Canadians by themselves seem proud that their self-image and general country was reflected in the words of the Prime Minister and the country's diplomats. And then, the trouble started. Trouble started first with Trump coming in, who broke no nonsense, and Justin Trudeau and his minister in attendance, Freeland. They started going to USA, and they were very well aware that what Trump wanted could be negotiated with Trump, but not with Democratic governors, Democrats, or with the senators of the different hue. And they went to the different places, met the councillors, mayors, governors, senators, with the result that they egged up Trump much more with a disastrous relationship. That was the biggest policy failure on the foreign policy. Then the disastrous trip to India, where the Prime Minister, in a buffoon-like manner, wearing clownish clothes, wanted to set up an empathy with the Indians, and that resulted in annoying not only Indians, but the whole world media criticized this jamboree. And with India, because of their total insensitivity in promoting up terrorists and receiving that a terrorist graciously, did not go well. So much so that the premier of a province, the chief minister, refused to meet Trudeau. And the second chief minister in UP did not meet him at all. Not even a minister was sent, which normally is sent as a protocol. He was received by a very junior minister of the Modi government. But Modi showed graciousness by ultimately meeting him. But the trip was a disaster. Then Saudi Arabia. We unnecessarily interfered in their affairs. The people arrested there were in a normal course citizens, and hundreds of citizens are arrested all over the world, and we don't take it up. Simply because he happened also to be simultaneously a resident of Canada does not confer on the person the right of a citizen. And then a dual citizenship does not provide you with the same privileges that a single citizenship does. Anyway, what happened over there was their outlook, and unnecessary interference resulted in kicking out of the Canadian ambassador. Then came Philippines. When Prime Minister talked to President Duterte, he was totally outraged and told the Prime Minister to shut up. Of course, he didn't use the word shut up, but the whole import was the same. It is the same President Duterte who had called Obama son of a bitch. And he did not mince words when telling Trudeau to mind his own business, look after the human rights of the indigenous Canadians, rather than poke his nose in the affairs of Philippines. Then came China. They wanted to have a free trade with China. They were bowing, licking the feet. And then they started telling them to firm up their human rights. When you go and beg somebody for a largesse, you don't tell him, look here, your nose is running. There has to be a certain political way, but then they lost all sense. So and then Rohingya, they sent a special representative, Bob Ray. And I, in my personal talks with the Myanmar authorities, came to know that he was treated with scant respect. A man who wanted to be the Prime Minister of Canada was treated like a third-rate politician, and no head of the government was willing to meet him. So he met the minor officials and came back. And the trip of Bob Ray was a disaster. So whether it was South Asia, India, South Asia whole, India specifically, Philippines, China, Saudi Arabia, USA, the foreign policy failed. And in case of China, the matter worsened when they arrested Weiwei's executive Meng, which was justified. You are having an agreement with USA, and when the USA wants somebody, you have to arrest and prosecute him, and then it's for the judiciary to see whether the person is deported or not. So the easiest thing should have been, well, look here, we have an independent judiciary, we do not interfere in the working of judiciary, and that could have satisfied the Chinese. They could have told, look, this is an affair between you and USA, but we are bound by our independent judiciary. So whatever action judiciary takes, we'll abide by that. And that would have settled the matter. It did not happen. As a matter of fact, McCallum gave an hint, or rather a clear indication, that the federal government, if it wanted, could override judiciary and tell them to do what the government wants. This is absolutely not acceptable either locally or internationally. And if we look at the Weiwei's problems, they are not only here. We know their executives have been arrested in Poland and in other countries. US is taking action, and practically all over the world, in whether it's Germany or France, action is being taken against Weiwei. So when the government of Poland arrested the sales director, China didn't object because they said it, okay, he has been caught in an unfair activity, so he's being prosecuted. And here, Canada had a perfect legitimate excuse of saying that we are living up to the treaty with USA. So, and then the Chinese were arrested. Then another gaffe. A former diplomat was arrested by China, and the Prime Minister goes on to say, well, they have violated the Vienna Convention, which was not violated because this gentleman was traveling on his personal passport, not on a diplomatic passport. So if a person is traveling on a regular passport, he is not entitled to the privileges of diplomats, and as such can be prosecuted, can be arrested without violating. And as a result thereof, the Chinese spokesperson said that Canada is possibly working under the image that white supremacy can still rule. So that's not that. Then a Canadian, Robert Schellenberg, was ordered to be hanged by death by court, which was not bad. He was arrested in 2014 for smuggling. And the punishment in China and Singapore and other countries is that if you smuggle drugs, the punishment is death. So he was punished with just a matter of sense, a matter of the law. And then they protested, no, don't hang him. We don't hang in Canada. We rather reward terrorists by giving them $10 million. What nonsense. How can a Canadian, if he's a smuggler and he has indulged in an act which has a prescribed punishment and has been given that punishment, you can request to take a lenient view, but you cannot demand it. So what is happening is, it's more than a tit and tat. And the government has failed to realize that it is not a power really, it's only a soft power. A power based on being good. A power based on giving the foreign aid is not a power in the real terms. Power in the real terms is what America, Russia, China, India have it. Power comes out of the muzzle of a gun, not from ink. That has a power, knowledge has power, but that's a long-term effect, not immediate. And diplomacy is immediate. Right now, the truth is, liberals cannot do anything except huff and puff. That is, on a good day they huff, and on a bad day they puff. And simply think that China is acting arbitrarily and Saudi Arabia is acting against the concept of the human rights is good to say, but it's a bad diplomacy. We are used to, in diplomatic word, a direct quid pro quo. And diplomacy says that if you cannot indulge in a retaliatory action, keep quiet. We failed in USA when NAFTA was there, when we ultimately accepted whatever they wanted. With an added thing that had we accepted Trump's condition in the beginning, there would have been no 30% tax on aluminium and steel. But we ultimately accepted it, and that tax is still there. The same is going to happen with China. And Russia, we could afford to annoy them because USA was also annoying them. By ourselves, we dare not do anything against Russia. Did we do anything when Russians dropped their flags in the Arctic and claimed that territory to be our own? We simply say, please don't do it. We dared not tell them, look here, it is a violation of our rights. So as we are unable to maintain the policy of quid pro quo, the best thing is to take a diplomatic view. So what you have got to do is, Canada could join its Five Eyes peers in putting restrictions. It should join hands with the Europe and US. And with Saudi Arabia, it should simply say, okay, we don't like it because we have different values, but let's agree to disagree. Or stop the sale of armed vehicles worth $1 billion. Can you afford that loss? And not only one-time loss, but a recurring loss. So there's a virtue signaling of a more muscular foreign policy. That's what we need. And that today would come at a much higher cost than Trudeau could ever imagine. Really, our foreign policy has run amok. Rather, we have no foreign policy at all. It is at the whims of the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, and both of them are not sufficiently capable of handling it. Just yesterday, somebody very close to the government was talking to me, and I told him that they need people who have knowledge of the cultures. The knowledge and awareness of the culture must precede taking action. Understand the cultural background, the social background of the country with whom we are dealing. Take that into consideration and then take political action. Don't take any action that is not connected with the realities of life. And do not take action in a vacuum. Unfortunately, Canadian foreign policy has proved to be a major failure, and I pity the policy makers, but I pity the country more because it's the country that suffers. The policy makers come and go, they change. But the country's suffering would continue even under the new government if it comes. And that would be a long-term harm to the country. Think about it. Thank you.